the Word of God, and he is bringing about the promise of God. Therefore, Baasha is excused for what he did. And no, he's not. We open up the book of Habakkuk. We find in the book of Habakkuk God having an interaction. It's also found in the book of, I might slip in somewhere else. I have to go there somewhere. Maybe Micah. Where God's having an interaction. And he says, I'm going to judge my people. And the prophet says, well, how are you going to judge your people? And he says, well, I'm going to bring the Assyrians and they're going to judge my people. And the prophet gets angry. The prophet gets upset and says, oh God, the Assyrians are worse than us. The Assyrians are worse than your people. We're doing wickedness and unrighteousness, but they're desperately wicked. They're desperately unrighteous. Will you use the most wicked to judge us? Will a just God do that? And God says, I'm going to use them. And they're going to be my tool of judgment. And then I'm going to judge them for their sins. Why? Because God in His sovereignty, God is not the author of sin. But God can use the sinfulness of man to fulfill His purposes. That's where we give Him sovereign power. But that does not excuse man for his sinful actions. Because every man dies for his own sin. Though many of these sins, Nadab walked in the sins of his father. He acted just like Jeroboam. Baasha walked in the sins of Jeroboam. He acted just like Jeroboam. But Nadab did not die because of Jeroboam's sin. Nadab died because of his sin. Baasha does not die because of Jeroboam or Nadab's sin. He dies because of his sin. See, God is just. The reason He can declare what's going to happen is because He sees it before it happens. He's outside of time. And I know this makes our minds smoke a little bit, and it's okay to let them smoke just a little bit. And it's okay to sit there and go, well, I can't wrap my mind around it. And God says, no, you can't, because I'm higher than you, and I'm greater than you, and I'm above you as the heavens are above the earth, right? So we'll never figure it out. But what you need to know is that God in His sovereign power is able to use the sinfulness of man to bring about His purposes, but that does not mean that God is the author of that sin. Baasha still chose to kill those individuals. That's where we get the free will. And because of that choice to sin, God holds him accountable. Just because good comes out of our bad does not excuse our bad. You say, well, look what God did with that. Right. But look at the sin He committed in doing it. And we have to just reside that that's who God is. He is greater than our sin, and that He uses it to fulfill His purposes, because even in our sin, we cannot change or stop the purposes of God. But that does not excuse our sin. There's still an accountability for each individual. We see the accountability of man for his actions. Each and every one of them. We have to have an account for the choices we made. We'll see this consistency through the rise and fall of many. God's active. He's actively involved, even though at times it will look like He's not. God will announce the judgment, and then He will bring that judgment quite often through the sinful actions of other individuals. But that does not excuse their actions, because those individuals are accountable for their sins. Man is accountable because man has to give an account for that. You say, well, what if Baasha had repented and turned to the Lord and not done those things? Well, God would have known that before it happened. He knew that what was in the heart of Baasha was being used of God, even that wickedness that was in his heart. God used it for His purposes, but that does not allow Baasha to go unjudged for his sins. We'll see that over and over again as we see this progression of kings. All right, brothers, thank you. That's 1 Kings 15:25 through 16:7. And we make our way through there just as